Have 2 weeks left.
What?
2 weeks?
Yeah, 2 weeks. 2 weeks. When's Rosh Chodesh? Shabbos?
Yeah, Sam.
Okay. So we're in Siman Lamed Tes in the Rav Chaim Freelander's Simanim, and page 50. Yeah, please sit. Please take some cookies, some linzer tarts, some pink and yellow, black and white.
Friday.
And apparently there's no birthday cake or coffees. We'll work on that.
Yeah, I don't know who the
the coffee culprit.
Thief.
It's been a coffee thief here. At least the shul is clean. Okay. So Siman Lamed Tes. Last week we had a very philosophical discussion about different attributes of Hashem. We said that Hashem is wise and Hashem is kind, but there's really no way for us to understand the depth of His kindness. But there is something called, or the depth of His wisdom. But there is something called Yichud Hashem, that Hashem is one. And the Ramchal said the only way to understand Yichud Hashem is to show the negation of anything else. That Hashem is the only thing that exists, that there's nothing else that exists besides Hashem. And we said that is why in the world there appears to be other forces, there appears to be forces of evil that one might think have an independent power, chas v'shalom, but they don't. And the end goal of humanity is to show that these independent powers don't really exist. They're nothing. They only exist because Hashem wants them to exist so that He can reveal His oneness. So we said when it comes to Yichud Hashem, the attribute of God, that He's one, that is shown through the negation of the opposite, through negating anything which is the opposite, which appears to be the opposite of Hashem. But and that's the only attribute that we can use that concept to demonstrate. When it comes to other attributes, like Hashem's wisdom, Hashem's kindness, that we can't show through the fact, right? Showing that Hashem is not cruel doesn't show the depth of how kind He is, right? So that you can't do. And you can't show that Hashem is not foolish. That doesn't show how wise Hashem is. It's only when it comes to Yichud Hashem, Hashem's oneness, that we can say this. So it was a little, last week was a little philosophical, so now we are ready to move on. But this is something, a concept that we're going to talk about a lot in the Sefer, is the revelation of Hashem's oneness, that there's one God and He's the only power. Because we mentioned all of those groups that had these false beliefs. Some people thought that there were multiple gods, and that different gods had different powers. Some people thought that you could even manipulate forces like witchcraft against Hashem. And the truth is that you can't. All of these forces of evil that we call only exist because Hashem wills them to exist. He is the ultimate power. So let's continue. So Lamed Tes in the English, we're on page 50. Amr Hanashama. So again, this is a conversation between the intellect and the soul. So says the soul. So until now the intellect was talking for quite a bit. Zevadai, this for sure is true. We can only understand things by putting things into different categories. In every category we need to separate from each other in order to understand their topics and the things that come out of them. And even though the way Hashem, quote unquote, thinks is not the way that people think, until to the point where these differentiations that we're making, they're really not applicable to Hashem's the way Hashem thinks. But people, we need to understand in the way that people think. Right? Hashem, the way Hashem thinks is not the way we think. That the way that Hashem quote unquote thinks is not the way that we think. And even though these differentiations that we're making don't really apply to Hashem, it applies to our way of thinking so that we can understand. And now we're going to learn, because Hashem made the world in such a way that we're able to understand a certain aspects of it. We can't understand everything, but we can understand quite a bit. Amar Seichel, says the intellect. Yosim Mashamarta, more than what you said, Amalach ben Yezah, I'm going to tell you. If Hashem wanted to, He could create the world with His limitless abilities. And we would not Hashem could have created the world in such a way that we wouldn't be able to understand anything about it. We wouldn't be able to understand what's before something, what's after something, cause and effect. Right now you can look at the world and we can learn about nature, we can learn that there's cause and effect. Hashem created the world in such a way that we can understand it. But Hashem could have created the way where we just wouldn't have understood anything. He just could have made it with his total abilities, and that would be it. Vim hayabarakach, and if Hashem would have created it like that, we would have to be quiet. We couldn't say anything about his creation. We wouldn't be able to understand anything. Because Hashem's limitless abilities are not something that we can understand at all with our intellect, with our human intellect. The human mind is limited by certain rules. Right? We have certain limitations based on our brains, and it's impossible for us to understand. First of all, to really understand the essence of Hashem, it's impossible. And had Hashem created the world using those attributes, it would be impossible for us to understand the world. But since Hashem wanted us to understand a small amount of his ways, and his actions, on the contrary, not only that, but Hashem wants us to understand his actions, and he wants us to run after it. So he chose to create the world in such a way, in this way, in the way that people could understand. Perish, in a way, in an order that's understandable. The concept is, Hashem created the world according to the creations, but not according to his abilities. So which gives us the opportunity to understand, if not a little bit of the world, and a great deal about the world. So Hashem is infinite and could have created the world any way that he wanted, and he could have created it with these limitless, infinite abilities. But had he done so, we wouldn't be able to understand anything. We wouldn't understand cause and effect, nothing. But since Hashem wanted his creations to understand the world, and not only that, and his ways, and he wanted people to work hard to understand his ways, so he created the world in a way that human beings can understand, according to human beings. Now he's going to give an example. V'haraya l'davar, and proof of this, Ma'aseh Bereishis is the creation of the world, kakasu b'toraso, as it's written in the Torah. Shahar Sham meid al atzmo, shabara es olama b'chaluk zmanim. There the Torah says that Hashem created the world at separate times, with separate times, right? The first day, the second day, third day, fourth day, and so on. V'havdam amaras, and with different statements, right? He said let there be light, and there was light, and so forth and so on. Ubeseder mashiratzavo, and according to the Seder that he wanted, the order that he wanted. V'lo hakol b'vazachas, he didn't create it in one time. V'lo b'maimer echad shehayachol ilhi baros, he could have created it that way, right? Hashem could have just said, there's a world, boom, that's it. Parshas Noach, let's go. Right? Or go to the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. But he didn't do that. He said, there's the first day, the second day, third day. He did this on the first day, this on the second day, this on the third day, because Hashem wants us to understand. And now we can understand all of his actions and the reasons. And all the more so what comes out of them. All the details. In the order that's understandable by which we find in the human realm. So we're seeing a concept here that Hashem created the world in such a way that we not only are able to, but we should strive to understand the world and Hashem's ways. Okay. But let's go back to our topic. Hine, when we say that Hashem is one, we already heard that it means to say shlilus kol zulasa, that nothing else exists besides him. Davar klali lechol milos shleimuso asher ein lahem tachlis klal. And this is a general principle for every other attribute that Hashem has. Ki kol ma shehu bo mila ushleimus tzarich lahavin tamid she'ein zulaso b'mila hahi. And any attribute that Hashem has, we have to understand that there's nothing else. Tzarich lahavin tamid she'ein zulaso b'mila hahi. That there's nothing comparable in this attribute. She'ein hefachlo, there's nothing opposed to it. She'ein monealo, and there's nothing that prevents him. She'kol ze mechlal hal yichudhu k'mo shebiyarno. Everything is really a subset of Yichud Hashem.
Which means that it's chesed is not comparable to anyone else's chesed.
Right. And he says also that, this I don't totally get, that all these, which we talked about last week, that all of the attributes of Hashem, of chesed, I think he's going to mention it now, and kindness and wisdom, those are all subsets of Hashem's oneness. Let's see, I think he's going to say that now. Ushnei dvarim nimsinu lemeidim min hakdama hazos. And these two things we learn from this introduction. One, Masha b'yarnu kvar, what we already explained. She'ein shaykh v'shum mayla acheres she'yabore mashu hevach shleimuso klal. It's not shaykh, it's not possible that Hashem would create something that's opposite of that something could exist that's opposite of Hashem's completeness. Elabamailas yichudo. Meaning, for us to understand an attribute of Hashem by showing the opposite, the only thing that showing the opposite demonstrates is his yichud, is his oneness. Perush, kisharatzu legalos mailos yichudo yizbarach ulevar oso beir mevor heitev b'chol chelke gedero. That when Hashem, by showing us the fact that evil exists and then by destroying it, that shows us that He is one, and that's the only attribute which is shaykh to show us is through that way, by showing the negation of the opposite is Yichud Hashem, like we mentioned at the beginning. The Habez, the second, Shalagabi Mailis HaYichud Hashalim Hazeh, concerning the attribute of Yichud, of the oneness of Hashem, Kol Shar Mailis Hem Kimo Dvarim Pratim, this was mentioning before, that every other attribute is like a detail of that. V'zeh Davar Klali, and this is the general concept. Sharihu Mashkif HaKol HaMailis Kulam, Hashem is watching over all of the oversees all of the other attributes. Kamo Sheharenu L'das. Shebechol ma sheyesh b'shleimuso she'ein lo sof v'shir v'kulam hinehu yachad b'tachlis hayichud. Ein zuloso ein hefechlo. When it comes to Yichud Hashem, Hashem's oneness, there's nothing else. There's nothing opposed to Him. Ve'ein moneal elav, and there's nothing that prevents Him from doing anything. Kamo shebiarnu, like we said. V'nishra she'emes hazeh b'amitas himso b'hachreach, and this has to be shehu hamerkaz mikol ma shenuchol ledaber mishleimuso. He is the center of everything that we can speak about in his shleimus. Hashem is a being which has to exist, and it has to be that he will be, and that he's the only one like this. Hashem is the only being which is necessary that he exists. And this is obvious to all believers of holy faith. And we're going to see other concepts that will come out based on what I explained to you. Okay, I think we'll stop here, but just to summarize, we learned that... What?
Another couple of lines at the end.
That's all right, I'm going to do that next week. Okay. But we are learning that... the attribute of Yichud Hashem, of Hashem's oneness, is that He is the only power, and anything that appears to exist besides Him doesn't really have an independent power. And the existence of evil is to show that eventually that evil will be destroyed, and that there's only one Hashem. And then after that, the Ramchal said that Hashem created the world in such a way that we could understand His ways, and we could understand the world. And even though Hashem could have created it with his infinite power, and just by, like, for instance, the creation of the world, He could have created with one statement. Hashem didn't do it that way, but He created in steps with separate statements in order that we could understand the world and His ways. So we'll stop there.